So we'll go through, you'll hear several of those terms throughout this PowerPoint presentation. Maybe. So chicken anatomy, you got the egg up in the upper left-hand corner. You got the yolk. It's the nice, we all know what that is, the nice yellow part of the egg. That's where the majority of your protein is. Around it is the albumin, which is your egg white. There's a shell membrane. And the shell itself, there is an air cell that's normally on the bigger end of the shell. That's where, if you are developing the eggs into chicks to hatch, that's where they breathe through. And then in the lower right hand corner is the digestive system of a chicken, quite a bit different from our digestive system. The biggest thing to notice is the crop. All the food goes into the crop before being processed on into the system. You'll hear a thing called sour crop. That's where if the bird can't pass on through the system, the food will build up there in the crop and go bad. So you'll either have to help, and you'll tell it bulges out from the chicken's chest. So you'll either have to help them pass it back up and then take them to the vet and find out what's causing the blockage throughout the system, or keep an eye on them, put some water down in there and help them process that on further. If it's already bad smelling, you just open the bird's beak and smell down their throat. If it's bad smelling, that needs to come back up because that means it's already started to rot. So getting started, for the review, before the chicks arrive, make sure you have the game plan of where you're going to put them. Make sure it's clean, it's dry, it's at the right temperature. There's no drafts going through. You got adequate spacing that will grow up with them until they can be moved out into the coop. Clean and disinfect everything with a 1 to 10 bleach to water dilution. And make sure you got the shavings or straw or newspaper down about 2 to 5 inches deep. Make sure you're not using cedar. Cedar can cause respiratory issues and can lead to death. One thing, most hatcheries do vaccinate for Marek's, coccidiosis, salmonella. Polaris Poultry is having birds vaccinated for Marek's and IBD. They'll only vaccinate for coccidiosis or salmonella if you buy 25 birds or more. You can also go to the vet and get, because the vet, FDA took all regulations away from feed stores like Mill and Feed and gave it to the vets because that's what the FDA does. And so you can go to a vet and get vaccines for coccidiosis, salmonella from your vet and give it to your birds as well. So checklist, shelter, heat source. There's a lot of different heat sources. Here in this picture, we have the brooder reflector with the big heat lamps. If you're going to use that, I always highly recommend having a safety feature. Because those brooder reflectors are notorious for that clamp to fail and they fall and down into your bedding, and that's what causes your fire coops. So always add like a chain, and so if that clip does fail, that chain will catch it before it hits the bedding. But there's also heat mats and everything, other different options that you can use to heat your coop. Make sure you got bedding, feeders, waters. If you choose to go with vitamins and electrolytes, you can do that as well. All that stuff can be supplied here at Mill and Feed and several other different feed stores across the valley and Anchorage. So brooding chicks, so make sure you avoid the big chill. You want your area to be preheated to 90 to 95 degrees before your chicks arrive. Make sure that thermometer is down on their level. You don't want the air temperature about 10, 20 inches up above them to be 90, 95, because it's going to be cooler down on the ground. Make sure it's 90, 95 degrees down on the chicks level. The birds will tell you if they're too hot, too cold. If they're huddled underneath the heating source in a tight little ball, then it's too cold. So you can either drop your heating source and then they'll spread out. If they're up against the walls of your shelter and they're trying to get away from the heating source, then it's too hot. So just raise up their heating source. And you want that heating source to start out about 18 to 20 inches above the bedding. So after your first week, you can drop the temperature by 5 degrees until you're about 65 degrees. In this picture, this is their perfect temperature. They're not huddled together, not up against the wall. They're just moving around their area, eating, drinking. If they want to be directly under the heat source, they have access to that as well. Starting other poultry. If you've ever heard that turkeys are dumb, it is true. You know, a chick, you only have to dip their beaks in the water once, show them where the feed is once, they know where to go. Turkeys, 3, 4, 5 times, and maybe by then they'll know where the food and water is. So just constantly monitor them for a week or two, make sure that they are eating and drinking. You would start out with turkey starter and then move to the turkey grower finisher. With ducks and geese, they love to swim, but they can't swim until about 4 weeks. So keep them dry until then. They love to get into whatever water source they can and splash around. So putting marbles into the water is great. Honestly, putting marbles in anyone's water is a good suggestion to keep people out. Some birds like to fall asleep in the water and then they end up drowning. So just put some marbles in there to keep them out. With ducks and geese, you'll start on duck and goose starter and move to maintenance. And for all your other wild game birds, you'll start with the starter and then go to the grower. For spacing and lighting, for every 10 birds, you need 1.5 linear feet for your chicks on the feeders and 1 quart or less for your waters. Now, I know those little 1 quart waters are the cutest things in the world, but they really grow, your birds outgrow them quickly. So I always recommend to always start with like the 1 gallon waters. Those end up growing up with your birds a lot more, so you can have them during the chick stage and the pullet stage. Depending on how many birds you have, you might be able to get away with it even at the layer stage. But it's all dependent on how many birds you have. As you can see, the amount of water that they need grows with age. So you start with 1 quart, 1 to 2 gallons, to 2 to 3 gallons. So water is very important for your birds. Floor space also grows. Lighting starts out, your chicks are almost under light for 24 hours a day. Then you back it off, and then as they get older and you want them to lay eggs, you increase that lighting. Just a reminder, if you have any questions throughout this, don't hesitate to ask them in the chat box. I will see them, or if I don't, Piper is here and she will butt in and ask the question. So shelter and safety. In Anchorage, the most popular is yarding. And that's where you have a permanent building and it's fenced all the way around. You can have fencing on top. And that's because we have predators that can fly into your coop. The biggest movement across the US is free range. That's very popular. There are people here in Alaska that do free range their birds as well. They tend to have some loss. So when can your chicks go outside? So about 5 to 6 weeks of age, when they have all of their adult feathers. Even if they do have all their adult feathers, especially since there's a movement here in Alaska to get your chicks earlier and earlier. Chicks used to never arrive until April. They're now arriving in January and February. Those birds are still going to need help regulating their body temperature. So at nighttime, they'll still need a heat lamp, and they still might need some help during the day to regulate their temperatures. And just remember to keep your chickens safe, protect from all sides. We sell chick fencing here, a 1/2 inch by a 1 inch rectangle square fencing. Electric fencing will be going over a little bit actually on the next slides. Making sure you're using latches. One of the biggest recommendations is bury your fence 6 inches deep into the ground, because foxes can dig. They can build tunnel networks like there's no tomorrow, and ermine like to use those tunnels as well. So they can end up in your coop very easily. So being bear aware, bears love chickens just as much, if not more, than humans. Electric fences have 3 main parts. There's the charging box that's really lightweight. Just make sure that your charge box delivers between 5,000 to 7,000 volts, and the joule rating should be between 1/4 and 0.7. Those have been effective for deterring bears. It could be AC or DC current. Electric fencing boxes, I mean, like I said, I was born and raised on a beef cattle farm in Kentucky. We always used electric fencing, not only for the cattle, but there was packs of wild dogs in the area, and we also had coyotes. So those also deterred them from coming onto the farm. The second part is the wire. Recommend 3 strands of wire, with the lowest being about 10 to 12 inches, even as low as 8 inches to the ground. And the upper wire at about 40 inches above the soil, and then a third wire in between those two. There's options. You can use poly wire or the electric plastic netting. It looks like the orange net fencing that you use for moose, but it's an electric fence netting. Or like we used on our farm, we just used steel fencing, or you can use an aluminum gauge, about 14 gauge wire. The third part is the grounding wire, which is a 4 foot by 5/8 of an inch rod that's driven in the ground, that once the bear comes in contact with the wire, the power is then returned back to the grounding rod and back to the box so that it can go back through again. This is a great example of a setup. There are 5 wires. There's 2 ground wires in between the hot wires. The hot wires are the ones that are going to deliver the jolts. And I don't know about you guys, but I remember when I was in the dumb stages in middle school, high school, and my science classes, learning about current and everything, and learning that, oh, if you're in leather boots and touch the fence, you shouldn't get electrocuted. Yeah, that's true unless you're standing in a wet field of hay. You're still going to get a nice jolt, and depending on how much jolts you got running through the fence, it's a good jolt. I will admit it, I was the dumb one who did that. There's all kinds of insulators you can have as a gate handle, where you can actually hook the wire to the gate to this plastic insulator, and you can open the fence so you can walk through, and you can close it back. Or if you're agile enough, you can climb under the fence or jump over the fence. Done that many a times on the farm as well. And are there any questions about electric fencing? Like I said, this is a great setup for electric fencing. Hot wire alternating with ground wire, and the ground wire goes back to the ground pole that then goes back to the fence charger, then back to the hot wires. All right, so we've already talked about the Anchorage Municipality regulations, 5 chickens per 6,000 square feet, 1 additional for 1,000, no roosters. You do not have to have a permit, and coop restrictions, a minimum of 10 feet from all the property lines. You know, if you got a pretty chill neighbor who doesn't care, might give them a dozen eggs a week to help keep them chill. You know, they'll be pretty cool and relaxed with you about having chickens, but there are a lot of people who get annoyed with chickens. Even the females can be pretty talkative. So there might be some complaints from your neighbors about noise and stuff from your birds, but as long as you're going to meet these guidelines, nothing's going to happen with animal control. So food and water, just making sure you disinfect the wires prior to use and then weekly. Birds like to drink from clean waters. They don't like dirty. The birds are also very picky. Like me, I like my water ice cold. They like their water between 50 and 55 degrees. They like to also drink more water as they get older, and they do most of their drinking at dawn and dusk. So water is pretty important because a chicken's body is more than 50% water, and egg is 65% water. So water is very important. Now, if you don't have a heated poultry drinker for the winter time, you can do the 2-bucket method and go out first thing in the morning, put on a clean bowl of water. That's 50 to 55 degrees. So they drink the water first thing in the morning. Inside the house, you have a second bowl ready to go for dinner time. Go out, give them that bowl. And when you give them that bowl, you bring in the one that you gave out at morning time. You clean it, and you have it ready to go for first thing in the morning. You can keep rotating those bowls that way. If you don't want to spend the money on a heated poultry fountain, that's a great way to water them in the wintertime so that their waters don't freeze. Water should always, you can elevate them, but it can't be higher than the chick's back. And putting marbles in is also a great suggestion. So different types of feed. So we make pellets and crumbles here in our feed, and it's all personal preference which one you feed. We get the comment from several customers, oh, their birds don't like the pellets, or that they get a lot of waste from the crumbles. It's all personal preference on what you want to do with your birds. They learn to adapt to you. Most feeds start out as a crumble, so chick starter is a crumble, the pellet's a crumble, the pullet grower is a crumble, and then it's not until the layer feed does it get to a crumble or a pellet. They are complete and balanced diets. Then there's the mash. The mash is a great option for wintertime when your birds need a little extra help keeping themselves warm at night, especially on these subarctic temperature nights, which we've had a lot of this winter. You can go out, take our scratch and mix in warm water, and we have customers who do oatmeal. Either way will work. Go out, feed that right before they go to bed at night, and as those grains break down, those carbs break down, that's breaking down to energy, and that energy will help keep them warm throughout the night. Like I said, scratch is a great source to make mash. It's just corn, cracked corn, and red wheat for ours. Some scratches have oats in them and wheat, millet, Milo, other things like that. All great options to mix them for a mash. It's a great activity diet, keeps your birds from getting bored. Thing to remember is never feed the birds under 8 weeks of age. And it's like candy to a kid, so use sparingly. It's a treat, not a food option. Grits, if you're feeding a complete and balanced diet like ours, it's not necessary. But if you are free ranging your birds, then you would want to add grit into their diet. Sprouts and fodder. That's just where you grow fresh greens for them, and that way then you're in fresh greens year round. And I think we'll talk about more about sprouts and fodder later on. So when to change feeds? Chick starter, you'll feed through 8 weeks of age, and then you'll move to pullet grower. This is also when you will add in scratch. You would stay on pullet grower until they lay their first egg. Pullet grower has some calcium in it, but not too much calcium. If you add too much calcium prior to them laying eggs, then you can develop leg deformities. So a lot of people tend to go chick starter to layer feed, and they forget that pullet grower feed. Don't add too much calcium. Stay on chick starter a little longer if you don't want to feed pullet grower, or do move to that pullet grower stage. Once they lay their first egg, then if you've got your chicks all at the same time, they should be about all at the same age. You can move the entire flock to layer feed. We do have our 16 and 20% feed. 16% is more geared for spring and summer. 20% is when we fall below subarctic temperatures. If you have a mixed flock of layers and turkeys and ducks and geese, then you can feed all purpose. You can continue with scratch, add grit, and add oyster shell. Broilers, they're easy. From hatch until they're on your table, you just feed them broiler feed. Nothing has to change. And then for ducks, geese, turkeys, and wild game birds, you have your starter, and then you move to your maintenance or grower, or you can go to the all-purpose poultry. So my favorite, let's do some chicken math. So how much feed are you going to need for your birds? So we're going to do easy math here. For your broilers, if you look in the box in the middle, approximately total feed per bird, they'll need 10 to 12 pounds to reach butchering weight. So if you have 10 broilers, you're going to need 20 pounds or 120 pounds of feed at the most. And currently our broiler feed is $27.73 per 50-pound bag. The no corn, no soy is $33.56. And the 40-pound bag of scratch and peck, which is your organic non-GMO, is $41.99 per bag. So your estimated feed cost from chick to slaughter for if you're feeding the mill and feed broiler is $83.19 or 83 cents a pound. That's if we're assuming that each bird weighs 10 pounds of slaughter. The no corn, no soy is $100.68 or $1.01 per pound. And the organic is $125.97 or $1.26 per pound. And I looked up this morning, current Fred Meyer price is $2.29 per pound for a whole bird, and organic price is $3.99 per pound. So for your meat birds, raising your own is a good way to go. On the flip side, when we do 10 chicks to layers, your first month is going to be costly because you had to feed chick starter, you had to feed the pullet grower, then you had to feed 1 month of layer feed before you even get approximately 3 dozen eggs. So if you feed the mill and feed that has corn and soy, you're looking at about $180.14, which comes out to $51.47 per month, which is, if we get 3 dozen eggs, it is $17.16 per dozen. The no corn, no soy comes out to $19.55 per dozen, and the organic comes out to $27.99 per dozen. A lot more expensive compared to going to Fred Meyer's and getting that Simple Truth cage-free eggs at $2.99 per dozen. But that's just your first month. Like I said, you have to invest a lot into your layers before you get a return. It does flatten out once you get into you're just feeding the layer feed monthly. So is a calcium supplement necessary? If you're feeding a complete and balanced diet like our feed is, no, you won't need additional calcium because we've already put calcium in the feed. If you have a prolific egg layer, like one that is laying every single day and not missing a day, if you have one that's laying 2 eggs a day, then you need to put some calcium out for those birds. If you don't, they will pull from their skeleton, causing a weak skeleton, and which will lead to easily broken bones, which could lead to death. So if you have a prolific egg layer, then yes. The problem is don't put out calcium too early. So make sure that they are laying eggs before you are putting out a calcium supplement, or else you could develop leg deformities, which could lead to death as well. Oyster shell and poultry limestone are your options for calcium sources. Right now, the company that goes out and dredges for oyster shells lost their permit, and the United States has not given it back to them yet. So it's really tough getting oyster shell right now. Then we found out that Purina, who is one of the biggest supplier of oyster shell, does not want to get back into the oyster shell business once that company gets their license back. So we're looking for other sources of oyster shell. Right now we do have the poultry limestone, which is the same percent calcium as the oyster shell. It's very high in calcium, is mainly used in the poultry industry, nowhere else. It does help with eggshell formation. And just remember, don't feed the chickens under 18 weeks of age. So sprouts and fodder, basically the same thing, just sprouts are less than 4 inches and fodder is greater than 4 inches. It's a great source for greens, fresh greens year round, especially in the long winters here in Alaska. It makes vitamins, minerals, and proteins more bioavailable. It increases the digestibility. All you need is just to find a whole grain. So any of the scratch and peck whole grains can be sprouted. We sell alfalfa, barley, wheat, and oats in the store. Any of that can be used to grow sprouts or fodder to keep your birds in fresh greens throughout the winter. In the upper right hand corner, they're just using a 10 by 20 tray, plastic greenhouse tray to raise. They got soil or peat in there, and you just plant your greens in there. And recommend staggering several different trays so that you're constantly in those greens throughout the winter. Fermenting, once again, this is a great way to improve enzyme content and increasing levels of vitamin B, C, and K. Also helps with digestibility. You just take you can use our pellet feed, or you can use whole grains, put in the water, and just fill the water up right up above the grains or feed, and set at room temperature for 3 to 4 days, just kind of like when you're making sauerkraut. Most important thing to remember is that you want this to smell good. You want it to be fruity or tart like yogurts, that kind of smell. If it smells awful, if it smells like alcohol or yeast, don't feed it. If you see mold growing, definitely don't feed it. Some additional supplemental feeding, the flock blocks. The flock blocks are whole grain supplements. They are great for encouraging pecking, especially if you have a bird that likes to peck on your other birds in your coop. Put a flock block out. This is a great enrichment tool for them. Also, if you want to go away for the weekend, fill up the feeders and waters, have someone come in and check the waters over the weekend, and put one of these flock blocks out because they'll feed 25 birds for 2 to 3 days. Diatomaceous earth. A lot of people are concerned because it says that it can cause respiratory issues. It causes respiratory issues in humans. A bird's respiratory system is a little bit different than a human, so it doesn't cause as much respiratory issues in their system. It is great for drying out floor waste and taking care of that odor. If you're doing the compost method of rotating your shavings or your straw in your coops, when you turn that wet spot over and you put some diatomaceous earth over it, sprinkle that diatomaceous earth. It'll help keep the smell down. It'll help absorb the moisture. And as that spot, that compost breaks down, you're creating heat in your coop. It's also great for if you get lice or mites in your coop. Also, if you're a gardener, if you have slugs in your garden, just put down some diatomaceous earth. As the bugs crawl across the diatomaceous earth, it'll cut their bodies. So it's a natural way of controlling fly populations and other nuisance pests. Some treats, we have created our own line of treats here. We currently have 5 different treats. We are working on 3 additional that'll come out later this year. We also have the Happy Hen treats and the Scratch and Peck treats. And all again, this is all for enrichment for your birds. It's not a food supplement. It is enrichment for your birds. If anyone's ever seen a bird find a worm in the coop, you know that they will run off to the other side of the coop because they're so excited they found a worm, they want it to themselves. But then when they do that, all the other birds are like, hey, what do you got? I want it too. And they'll just take off running. So it encourages enrichment throughout the coop. So composting and more on eggs and slaughter and just for fun. Composting. So like I mentioned earlier, with the rise of fertilizer prices, you might want to look into composting. You got your small flock of chickens that create all that waste. So you take that chicken manure and shavings from your coop, you put it into your compost pile. And once that's broken down, you put that onto your vegetable garden and your flower bed. That then helps produce these beautiful flowers and vegetables. You take those vegetables and you eat the majority of it, but like your peeling, except for like potatoes, and don't feed tomato plants to your chickens because some parts of the plants and vegetables can be poisonous. But a lot of vegetables, table scraps, and food prep can be fed to your flock. So you got this circle of composting that you can continue have going around. So proper egg cleaning and handling, collect your eggs twice a day, brush off your debris. Some people, if you're just selling to like your neighbors, you don't have to clean your eggs, but if you're selling in a retail setting, your eggs do need to be clean. So wash with an FDA egg wash and 90-degree water. Clean and dry your eggs, stored the large end up. Refrigerated helps maintain your grade up to 4 weeks. If you store at room temperature, it can drop 1 grade per day. Candling, you just want to hold at an angle. The shell oval, large on the one end, no cracks, no thin spots or ridges. Your air sac at one end, a double A quality egg would be 1/8 of an inch, and A quality would be 3/16 of an inch. Your white or albumin and your yolks stay in place when turned. And this slide here will help you better determine what kind of quality eggs you have. If you're scrambling to take notes on this slide or take a picture of this slide, we will be sending this or posting this on our YouTube channel, and you'll be sent a link to it. So a double A quality, your shells are going to be clean, they're going to be unbroken, they're going to look normal, no bumps, no ridges. Your air cell is going to be 1/8 inch or less. Your egg white is going to be clear and firm. The yolk is going to be outlined, slightly defined, and there's no blood spots or meat spots in the egg whatsoever. You'll see that if you do have blood or meat spots, then your quality is going to be a B or inedible. Processing birds. Your setup, you'll need 2 or more knives with 4 to 6 inches in length. You can, I recommend killing cones. A lot of people just like to straighten the neck and let them run around until they fall whenever they stop moving. Buckets, pails, water, table, a scalding tank like a turkey fryer, some thermometers, cutting boards, paper towels, and storage bags. Will caution you, you're going to see some slaughtering pictures on the next slide. So if you get queasy, I would recommend turning away from the screen. So processing birds, you'll hang your birds upside down or insert into the killing cone, which is the far right picture at the top. You'll cut the jugular vein. You'll scald the bird in water temps of 135 to 140 degrees. And then you will begin plucking. You can pluck by hand, or there's a machine now that helps you pluck the majority of the feathers off. It doesn't give them 100%. Then you want to remove the oil gland, which is found at the base of the tail. If you don't remove it, it could ruin the taste of your meat. Remove your feet. Don't throw the feet away, because there are some people who like them. Remove the head, neck, and the crop. You'll open the body cavity and pull out all the innards. You'll chill in ice water for at least 30 minutes to an hour, and then you'll age the meat before freezing in a refrigerator, or your meat will be tough. For 6 to 8 week old broilers, you'll age for 36 hours. For older birds, you'll age for a full 48 hours. So moving on, just for fun, if you are and feel so inclined to bring your chickens inside the house and have them as that type of pet, there are chicken diapers. They can be reusable. If worn correctly, the bird's feathers will stay cleaned. And just like a human diaper, it's there to catch the waste. If you have a chick and it ends up growing up to be a rooster, and you've fallen in love with that rooster, and you live in the Municipality of Anchorage, and you have that pesky neighbor who does not want a rooster next to you, there are crow collars that will most of the time work from keeping your birds from crowing. There's pet chicken harnesses and walkers if you want to take your bird for a walk. There's also chicken swings. One thing I can't stress enough is have a vet who specializes in chicken know where they're at. Vets here in Anchorage like to move around a lot, so if they're planning on moving, find out where they're planning to move to and move along with them. Great knowledgeable people, the cooperative extension offices. We have one here in Anchorage and one in Palmer. Your local feed stores, you have us, you have MBRD, Branded Feed, the pet zoos, Underdogs. There's a lot of Facebook pages. I will caution you with a lot of the Facebook groups. A lot of people have a lot of advice about a lot of things. If for you, if it sounds weird and you don't agree with it, don't do it. Do some research or contact a vet and ask them for their opinion. For electric fences as a bear deterrent, check out the Alaska Fish and Game website. The backyard chickens, I go to their website quite often to reference things. There's a lot of newspaper articles, the rise of backyard chickens, because there's a major movement across the U.S. for, especially in urban areas, for chickens. So if you are interested in ordering chicks, go to PolarisPoultry.com, click on products, and on the arrow beside chickens, you'll choose either if you want layers or egg birds. Add all your quantity and the different species you want to the cart. Click on the carts. Remember, if you come here to Alaska Mill and Feed to pick up, you will get a free 5-pound bag of chick starter. Make sure you agree to terms and conditions. Before you click that box though, make sure you read Dawn's terms and conditions. Click checkout, fill in contact information and shipping address, click continue to shipping, choose pickup. For a fee, he will deliver them to your house, but it's like last year was $25 and I'm not sure what it is this year. Enter your payment information and click pay now. After that point, I do not know if there's any other screens because I have not bought birds. Things to remember, we've already had our first chick pickup day. It will continue through June. Orders must be submitted online through Polaris Poultry the Thursday prior to the Wednesday you wish to pick up. So orders were due the 10th for pickup on the 16th. Orders will be due February 17th for pickup on the 23rd. Pickup will be Wednesdays for the month of February from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. in the month of February. It will move to Thursdays from March through June. That just helps out the hatchery. There are other options for pickup locations. There's a couple Valley locations. There's an Eagle River location. So if you want to go that route, you can. Just remember you won't receive that free 5-pound bag unless you're here at the mill. Birds will come vaccinated for Merrick's and IBD. For cancellations or any type of mistakes or miscounts, you will contact Polaris Poultry directly, not the mill. Jinx Hatchery is who Polaris Poultry is using. They guarantee sexing by 95%. So if you want females, you should get females. 5% chance that you might get a male. There are no minimums on how many birds you can order, but just remember if you want to have vaccines for coccidiosis or salmonella, you have to order 25 or more. Unless you want to go to your vet here in town, then you can order less. Some upcoming classes. Next Saturday at 10 a.m. we get Getting Your Seed Started with Sheila. On February 26th at 10 a.m. we have Planting Spring Bulbs with Sheila. On February 26th at 1 p.m. It's Chicken Biosecurity Health with our state vets, Dr. Gerlach and Dr. Coburn. I think Dr. Gerlach's actually going to be doing it this year. And they'll talk about protecting your flock against diseases such as salmonella and avian bird flu. Then on March 5th, be back with me with Chicken Nutrition. We'll break down all the different ingredients in feed, and then we'll compare some raw diets, raw ingredients that if you made them at home versus a complete and balanced diet like ours. Then on Saturday, April 2nd at 10 a.m., we have Planting Seed Potatoes with Greg. So if you want to learn all about seed potatoes, come on out to that class. Are there any questions at this time? If you come up with some questions afterwards, I am typically here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So go ahead and call and you can say, ask for that chicken lady who taught the class, or I'm Christy. Our staff is knowledgeable, so if you want to come on down and ask them, go right ahead. They'll answer your questions. Thank you all for your time. Hope you all have a great day.